Hey guys, today we are with Rick Rodriguez. Rick has been in my comment section a lot and I had to get him on the channel. He has been on a carnivore diet for 40 years at the end of this year. Hey Rick, how you going, man?
I'm good.
That's good, man. I can't believe 40 years in the carnivore diet. I had to get you on the channel. I had to ask your experience. I had to figure out how you're not dead yet with all that meat and all that cholesterol. How have you not had a heart attack yet? So, Rick, do you want to sort of tell us about your story and how you started eating a carnivore diet or only meat?
Well, one thing, I'm a lot different than a lot of the people that you've interviewed because I didn't start this diet as something as to treat a health condition. I started the diet as a joke. Basically, what it was, I was one of the smaller kids, very skinny, and I was really frustrated. And you know how it is when you're a teen, sometimes you don't think
Yeah,
rationally. So I thought, what's the sense of living when you're the shortest guy? Everybody picks on you, your life is just miserable. So why not just die of a heart attack? And my parents, my dad especially, was very health conscious. Anyone that knows him knows that he was always giving dietary advice. That seemed to be his thing. He was convinced that eating a whole foods, whole grain diet, heavy on the vegetables, definitely healthy bread, oatmeal, and stuff like that was going to be the key to living a long time. He always liked the idea of complex carbohydrates.
yeah,
He didn't really eat sugar, although he did like sweet things, but he didn't eat sugar. So and growing up, they gave me a lot of vitamins. And I do remember eating oatmeal and a lot of vegetables. And I absolutely hated vegetables. There's one of the things I really hate are cooked vegetables, especially cooked carrots. I find cooked carrots absolutely disgusting. And the most disgusting fruit, in my opinion, is the avocado. There's very few
really?
avocados that I can eat without throwing up. Just the taste of an avocado makes me feel sick. It was really bad.
Yeah,
So what ended up happening is that for years I was being pushed this crazy diet. And when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, there was also that hippie movement. We had a few friends that they were into the whole vegetarian thing. There was even it just seemed to be a health trend. There were a lot of health food stores. There was one not that far away from where I lived. Um, Even the commercial health food stores like General Nutrition, they used to sell all kinds of vegetable based products. They didn't really sell any meat. Of course, later on, they became a supplement and whatever you want to call them. But when I was a kid, definitely the whole wheat bread, the oatmeal, granola bars, that was a big thing, which is another thing I really hate. I used to call granola bars duck food. So I was being fed all of this stuff. And I went through elementary school, junior high. I was just so small in junior high, picked on all the time. I hated going to school. So I decided, I'm going to be starting high school. That summer, I was helping my dad build a carport. He left some boards loose. I fell through the roof, broke my arm, and I was pretty much stuck in the house. So my mom, she was a school teacher and she was taking courses at the university to get her teaching certificate. So she wasn't home much of the day that summer. My dad worked during the day. He was usually home later. So I was pretty much stuck in the house by myself before school started. So it came down to, well, what am I going to eat? My parents aren't there. There's
yeah.
nothing, there's really no food to eat. So I thought, well, what do I know how to cook? I could cook something. I go, well, maybe I could cook spaghetti or something, but I don't like spaghetti. The only way I could eat spaghetti is if I dump like half the Parmesan cheese on it. Otherwise, I found it horrible. And, the one thing I liked was meat. So we had a lot of ground meat. And by some chance, there was a really big sale on ground meat that summer. So we had a truckload of it in the freezer. So I thought, well, I can make myself hamburgers. So I thought about that, and I go, well, I don't really like the bread because we have that whole wheat bread which falls apart, and I don't like. I thought, I'm not going to eat the bread. So I just started making hamburgers with no ketchup, no bread, nothing. I would just eat the burgers. Then I thought, well, why would I waste my time making a burger patty? I could just make what the Cubans call picadillo, just like a ground meat. Maybe chuck an onion in there or something and stir it up on the pot. So it turned out to be something really easy to make. I thought, well, this is not hard. Cooking is not difficult. You just throw some meat in a pan, turn on the heat low, stir it a few times, and then you eat. It tastes good. Have some cheese with it, maybe some sour cream, and that's really how the whole diet started.
Wow. So it's because most people, like, I found it through other people or through poor sickness, but you sort of found it intuitively, just from, I guess, not liking certain foods. You just by default fell into a meat only or carnivore diet. What sort of, how did your body respond when you were younger? Did you notice many significant changes from starting to eat that certain way, or?
Well, that's the interesting thing. My parents were not happy. Let's put it this way. They kept warning me that this was a dangerous diet and that I was going to get sick. But I told my dad, I said, look, I'm really small. Maybe eating meat will help. So we kind of reasoned together. And my dad thought, well, okay, that makes sense. Maybe some meat. Because back then, if you wanted to gain weight, they gave you meat and potatoes. The thing
Yeah,
is that I really hate potatoes. I cannot stand potatoes. Baked potatoes, just I can't even get one spoonful in my mouth.
really?
Um, Mashed potatoes, the only way I can eat that is if the butter is poured on there, like half a stick of butter is poured on the mashed potatoes and I can force it down my throat. The only way I don't mind potatoes too much is fried, but I like them fried in lard or tallow. But, for that, there's another food that's actually better that I do like, and that's plantains. So if I did decide I wanted to have fries with my burger, I would just get some plantains and cut them in strips and fry them up in some lard or tallow. And I still do that occasionally. I haven't had any this year, but maybe 2 or 3 times a year when I got a bunch of them on the tree, I give most of them away. Sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I'll make a heart attack burger. And that's another thing I developed later, the 4 patty burger. I was inspired by the heart attack grill. That guy out there was in Arizona. Now he's that they try to give you a heart attack. So that's kind of how the diet started. Again, it started with me as a kid trying to get bigger. And then it came down to the point where, I kind of want to get a heart attack because it seemed kind of funny on TV. They had a show called Sanford and Son. And every time the old man would get upset, he'd go, oh, this is a big one. I'm going to have a heart attack. So it actually seemed kind of funny. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to die somehow, wouldn't it be nice to just have a heart attack and drop dead? And you see on TV, usually when they have a heart attack, it's like, oh, they hold themselves like this and then boom, it's over with. It's
I
not
guess it
like
is a
you
quick
have to
death.
suffer. What's that?
I guess it is a quick death. It is
Yeah,
quick.
it's quick. It's quick. So it seemed kind of funny. I thought, it's good. But like you said, as I started eating it, I thought, well, when am I going to start feeling bad? Am I going to start feeling sick? But it was just the opposite. The thing was that even though I didn't really get any bigger, it seemed like my attitude changed. I started looking at the other kids and the bullies and all that and thinking, why do I even let them bother me? They can try to beat me up. I can't fight with them, but I can run away from them. Then I can come back later and get even. So that's the way I started thinking about it. As the more I thought about going to high school, I kept dreading and I go, oh, I don't want to get there in Southwest High School. I'm going to get picked on like I was at junior high. But
Mm,
by the time I got to high school, I didn't feel that bad. Even though I had a broken arm, I missed school by about 2 weeks before it was okay for me to go back. And then when I went back, it didn't bother me. And, I had a couple kids that did a couple things, but it wasn't as bad as junior high. And then the thing that really surprised me is that my feet started to get bigger. This was the very strange thing. Probably halfway into 10th grade, my shoes didn't fit anymore and they were growing. My feet were growing at a rate that it didn't make sense. I wasn't that big of a kid, but my feet were growing and they'd laugh at me. Oh, what are you doing? Wearing clown shoes? I said, no, I can't wear the other ones. They don't fit anymore. And then that's about that time towards the end of 10th grade, maybe in the summer after that, then I really started to grow. And my parents were saying, you're getting much taller. And there's, on the doorway to the kitchen, my parents used to put the hand on my head and make a mark on the wall, and you could see that
yeah.
it was going up and going up and going up. Go, wow, that's a surprise. So my feet are getting bigger and I'm getting taller. And I don't know, I didn't even think about the diet at the time. But when I do get the time and I get the way to put a video together, I have a picture of me in junior high, and you can see that even the girls were bigger than me. By the time I finished high school, I was the second tallest in the school. I
Damn.
don't know if that was genetics or the diet or what, but
Yeah.
somehow I grew a tremendous amount. I didn't get any really big, but I just got taller. So I was
Mm.
tall and skinny like I am now, but my attitude changed. That was the other thing. And the funny thing was, I didn't really get picked on that much. In 10th grade, there was two or three little bullies, and I had one that just aggravated the heck out of me. And one day, sometime, I guess it was maybe April, May of that year, I remember I hit him so hard, I knocked him to the floor. And I had never done that before in my life. So, I think it was, I got stronger somehow. My
Yeah.
attitude changed, and things just didn't bother me as much as they used to.
I think that's a common effect we see when we're on the carnivore diet. We just feel strong in our own bodies and we're just more calm. We don't seem as affected as things that used to affect us a lot. Um, yeah, so you failed in your goal. It's been 40 years and you haven't had a heart attack yet. What's your thoughts on the whole, like when you were starting it, it would have been around the whole low fat diet craze. What was your thoughts on that at the time? And did you ever sort of think of maybe falling for that and going on a low fat diet like they all proposed?
Well, I can tell you, it was a year after I started this diet. There was a magazine, it was Time magazine, and they had on the cover of the Time magazine a dish, like a plate. It had two eggs on it, it had bacon like a frown, and then I think it said, and now the bad news. And they were pushing how dangerous bacon and eggs, how bad cholesterol was, and that you were going to have heart disease. But I was a kid, I was still watching shows like The Dukes of Hazzard, which is a silly TV show where the villain, Boss Hogg, eats a bunch of liver. He's big and fat, he eats raw liver, which I did also just to gross people out. And, it was like a joke to me. The more that they told me how bad it was, the more I laughed at it. I just thought it was so funny. This whole idea of getting a heart attack. I thought, well, okay, the chest pains will be coming any time now. But and it was my parents constantly were like, no, 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 you can't do that. I don't approve. I had to actually go and start sneaking getting some of the meat, but I did some work on my own. I was fixing lawnmowers because back then most of the kids, we didn't have all the refugees we have now to cut grass. Kids used to cut the grass back then to get money,
Yeah.
and pushing a lawnmower around in the hot sun. But I used to make money on that. And I'd go over to the Winn-Dixie or the Pantry Pride or one of the other stores around here. I'd go there on my bicycle until I had a car, and I'd buy whatever they had marked down and get a bunch of meat, and I'd put it in the freezer. And my parents were like, "Where'd you get?" "Oh, I got some meat." Okay, so we didn't have a lot of money, but I was able to get a hold of the meat, and I just kept eating that. And then over time, my parents sort of didn't care anymore. Like, well, give him
Mm.
whatever he wants, and then when we would fry food, they used to use Wesson oil, which I don't
Western.
like the smell of it. Wesson oil is like
Is
some
it
kind
like
of
seed
soybean
oils?
or yeah, it's a seed oil. And I hated the smell of that stuff because it smelled like paint. So I thought, oh, this is nasty. So every time they would fry something, like if they fried fish, they put horrible oil in there. So I thought, I'd rather have my fish boiled. So when I had fish, normally I would steam it or boil it. But then
Mm.
what I did, I thought, well, how could I fry food in a way that's really, really unhealthy? What's the worst thing I could fry food in? Well, obviously, McDonald's, they used to make their French fries in beef tallow. So I thought, okay, that gives me an idea. So when I buy the meat, I'm going to ask the butcher if they got any fat. What do they do with the fat? Oh, we throw that out. So I started taking the beef fat. I got a crock pot and I
Right.
started rendering beef tallow.
So you
And I
didn't
put
actually
a bunch
know
of
that
beef tallow.
you didn't actually know that
Yeah.
this diet was healthy. You were just trying to eat what you liked and just eat a bunch of fat and bad food, but it ended up being the healthiest diet.
I don't know if it's the healthiest diet, but for me, it worked really, really well. And it was one of those things that people used to get so upset. Oh, how did you fry that? I fried it in lard or beef tallow. When you
I
say,
used to say it.
everybody says that, yeah, a fat person is what we call a tub of lard. If you're a fat person, you're a tub of lard.
Yeah.
So I figured, well, if I eat enough lard, I'm going to get fat. And again, when you're skinny and small, being fat doesn't seem that bad, especially since most of the bullies that used to pick on me, they were kind of fat. So I thought,
Yeah.
what's better to be skinny or be fat? I want to be fat. So that's what I did. I figured I'll deep fry everything in lard or tallow. And tallow was the first one I figured out. Anyway, yeah, what I would do, I figured I'll deep fry everything in lard or tallow instead of vegetable oil. And if I needed to make a breading, I thought, well, I'm not going to use flour or bread because that's that whole wheat stuff. What can I use that's even more unhealthy? So since I discovered pork rinds, thought let me just get some pork rinds, break them up into breadcrumbs, then put your fish or chicken or whatever and eggs, roll it around in the pork rinds, and then fry it up. So it looked just like fried food, but it was supposed to be much more unhealthy.
Yeah, so being on this such unhealthy diet, how are you feeling now, being on it for 40 years? Like how are you feeling mentally, and just generally speaking on the diet?
I feel about the same as when I was, 20 something. I mean, obviously, I felt different when I was a teenager because I was smaller, but about the time I got to my 20s, I've been feeling pretty consistent ever since. I can do the exact same things that I could back then, and I don't have any aches and pains, and I don't really have any other issues. In fact, of course, I could be ready to die because I haven't been to a doctor since 1996, but
Wow.
still, I feel good.
You haven't been to a doctor since that's like 30
No,
years almost.
almost, yeah. It's been a
Well,
while.
and why haven't you been to a doctor? I think I know why, but do you want to tell the
Well,
viewers?
I don't like doctors, first of all, and I've had a couple of doctors try to scare me. They tried to put the fear of God in me that the way that I was eating was going to kill me. Now, I don't remember what any blood tests I had were because a lot of times the only time I went to the doctor is when I was getting another health plan. When I started my first business and I went to get the health plan, they did some blood tests. And I don't even think I remember seeing what the results were. It's just something I guess they put in their system. And then over time, every time I changed the plan, I'd have to go and get another set of tests or whatever. But
Yeah,
I've
okay.
never really, I never had any treatment. I've never been on antibiotics or anything. In fact, I've never been in the hospital other than
Wow.
to bring my parents there. I mean, I haven't been treated, but there was no reason. Once I had my second business, I had my first business in '96. When I had my second business, I never really got into the health plan because I didn't really care.
Yeah.
So that's why I really haven't been to a doctor.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask for if you knew what your blood tests were, but you said you didn't, haven't been to a doctor. But I don't think blood tests are relevant anyways. I just think it's more so of how you feel, as long as what you're eating is ancestrally appropriate and backed. Have you ever thought about adding in some plant foods or trying to add in some plant foods over the last 40 years? Or if you have you responded?
I did. What happened was back in '93, I actually went on a vegetarian diet.
No.
We had a hurricane. We had a big hurricane in '92, and the power was out for a couple of months. So what happened was a lot of people I knew, their food was going bad, and I had
Yeah.
rigged up a generator about 3 or 4 months before the hurricane hit. So when the storm came, that was my chance to try out the generator that I had set up. And then my dad and I, we made a project of making a wood gas generator that would actually run on wood instead of gasoline. So that we had power even when everybody else didn't. And a lot of our friends lived further south, which had even more damage. So after the storm, as soon as we could get to them, they were throwing out all this meat. Oh, give it to the ducks, give it to the cats, whatever. But a lot of it was still good. So I went down there with a cooler full of ice and I started loading up on meat. We had two refrigerators. We actually had two refrigerators and a freezer back then. My parents used to belong to a food service called the Rich Plan, and they had this upright freezer. So I filled the freezer. I filled the freezers in the refrigerator and the refrigerators with as much food as I could get. The thing is, since we had no power, most of the grocery stores didn't have any fruit. Now, I do eat fruit occasionally, but the hurricane wiped out pretty much all the fruit trees around here. All mine
Yeah.
were stripped, all the ones down south, a lot of them were knocked over. So there was no fruit anywhere. So it turned into, well, you have a choice between canned foods, MREs, and all this meat. Well, obviously, my parents ate some meat. My dad did enjoy a few steaks, and we had filet mignon, and we had some really nice ribeyes and everything. I hadn't had that quality of meat ever since I started the diet. So I was like in heaven over there, gobbling up all
Yeah.
this meat, and then all that seafood and all the stuff that just kept eating and eating and eating. I don't think I touched a fruit or vegetable in months because the hurricane was at the end of August. We didn't get our power back till October. I think it was September, October, somewhere around there. But I continued to eat this way for as long as I had the meat. Well, when the meat ran out, my parents had told me, well, you know, you've really done a lot of damage to yourself, especially my dad. You're not eating any vegetables. You're not eating any fruits. And my dad was also into juicing. He had a few. In fact, I still have a couple of his juicers. He used to like juicing fruits and vegetables and all that. And every time they tried to give me that stuff, I'd throw it out. I dump it into the duck pond or something. Maybe the ducks can have it. I can't stand juices. Juices to me are just like garbage juice.
Yeah.
It's nasty. But what happened was, since I ate so much meat, everyone was telling me, well, you're going to get really sick and you're going to have heart disease and you're going to get your arteries clogged and all that. And I was checking my blood pressure. It's always been low, usually around 90/60, somewhere in that range when I'm
That's
resting.
good.
My blood pressure's fine. But no, no, no. They said, well, okay. So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on a vegetarian diet. That's what I'm going to do. I am sick and tired of hearing all this nonsense about how good the vegetables are. So I'm going to switch to a vegetarian diet. So at the beginning of 93, I stopped eating all red meat completely. I stopped eating poultry. I stopped pretty much eating everything except eggs. I did eat some dairy and I did eat eggs. So I was having yogurt and I was having eggs, but the rest of it was vegetables. And believe it or not, I felt really good. I did not have any problems. Did not feel sick whatsoever.
Wow.
Plenty of energy. Felt great. So I thought, hey, maybe there's something to this vegetable diet. But around March, started feeling kind of sluggish. What would happen to me is I get up in the morning, I just didn't have that get up and go anymore. I'd get up and sometimes my throat would be like sore. It was like kind of, I don't know, I ate something bad. Then my stomach was gurgling. Then I started getting gas. And that was the worst part. I started getting this gas. So then they said, well, you got to stop eating the eggs because the eggs are going to give
Yeah.
you gas. So I got rid of the eggs. Okay. No, felt worse. Okay, you got to get rid of the dairy. Don't eat that yogurt anymore. So I stopped eating the yogurt. Felt a little better, but then it got worse. And then by about May, I was getting diarrhea all the time. Diarrhea, diarrhea. And then pretty soon it was diarrhea all the time. 4 times a day, diarrhea, diarrhea. It was really bad. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And then around July that year, I got the flu. We went, I don't remember what happened. We went somewhere, we got the flu. I got sick. I was in bed. Then both my parents got sick. They couldn't do anything. So we were all kind of stuck in the house. And for a week, I was in total misery, throwing up, sick, dizzy, didn't feel like eating anything at all. And I lost weight. I must have lost 10 pounds in this whole experience. It was really bad. So I thought, man, what am I going to do? But about a week, maybe week and a half, I don't remember. I finally got to the point where I could get up, I could walk around. I wasn't dizzy. I didn't feel like I was going to fall over. And then it was like, well, I don't feel like eating. What am I going to eat? I got no appetite for anything. But then I started thinking about eggs. I thought, you know what? I want to have some eggs. But my parents couldn't go to the store. We were all stuck in the house. We were all sick. They were sick at the time that I was feeling bad. So I thought, where am I going to get eggs? And I go outside and I'm like, oh, I'd love to have some eggs, but nobody has eggs. And guess what? Right on the right side of the front door, I found a nest. I found a nice duck nest full of eggs. So I got some of those eggs. I cooked up 2 eggs, ate them, and within an hour, I felt better. And then after that, I ate some more. I just felt really good. That same day, I was able to drive down to the Winn-Dixie. I hit the meat section. I got some steak. I got some ground meat. I don't remember what else I got. I got a bunch of meats. I came home, and my mom's like, are you going to eat that meat? Yeah, I'd love to have some meat. So I had some ground meat, and it was good. And I started eating that, and then steak, and then the appetite just started coming back. And within a couple of days, I felt a lot better. I still had, I had aches and pains. I had this headache that just didn't really go away, but it got better. It would get worse in the morning and then it would get better and worse. But after maybe 3 or 4 days, I felt fine and everything was back to normal.
Yeah, that's the issue with the vegetarian diets. Although you can see some results at the start, it takes time for the deficiencies to catch up, and the stuff like the bloating and from all that fiber and all that inabsorbable food would just explain a lot of your symptoms. Obviously now there's internet, so we can sort of see what other diets people are on. But at the time, were you the only crazy person on a carnivore diet, or did you know anyone else who was eating a similar way?
No, I didn't know anybody else that was eating that way, but I did. There was an old man in our neighborhood. He lived to about 96 or 98. I forget how old he lived to. He would always have meat every day. And he used to
Yeah.
tell me, you should have red meat every day. He would have either a steak. He had like a little steak. In the morning, he'd have steak and eggs. And then he would make these real big hamburgers and eat a big hamburger. And he swore by it. He said, you know, red meat is good for you. And he was relatively independent. I mean, he was still driving as far as I remember. I mean,
Wow.
I moved out before he got that old. I think it was in his 90s when I moved out. And then when I moved back, I found out he had died. But he, for far as I know, he was driving until at least 96. So he was
Yeah.
independent, eating meat.
So how was it? So obviously you've been on YouTube and stuff since technology's come around. So how was it seeing people like Sean Baker coming out with the invention of the carnivore diet, or seeing, you know, seeing other people interview you, or even myself, seeing these young kids or new people starting the carnivore diet? What was your thoughts like when that started to happen? And, you know, even now, like, how do you feel about watching videos of mine, a kid who was maybe you know, a long time ago, now on a carnivore diet?
It's encouraging because I had no idea that this was even a thing.
Yeah.
I figured that I was the only idiot that ate this way. I was crazy enough to try to poison myself by stuffing myself with as much meat and fat as I can get in my mouth, that was eventually going to kill me. But now it seems like I'm seeing younger people, older people, all kinds of people talking about how they've cured or at least mitigated illness. They've had all these chronic problems that I was never even aware of. I had no idea that young people could have these many problems because I never remember anyone when I was younger having chronic health issues. It just didn't happen. But I started seeing this on the internet. And
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
the first so-called doctor that I saw was at Saladino. I don't know if he's a
yeah,
psychiatrist or
yeah,
what he is. At the time, he was talking about eating meat and going outside and doing his thing. Of course, now he eats meat and fruit or honey or whatever else. And then, yeah, Sean Baker was another one. But I tried to reach out to these people, but to this day, none of them have contacted me in any way. The only one that contacted me was actually Anthony Shafee, and I did an interview with him, but it never seemed to make it to the internet. But yeah, he was the only one that contacted me. All the others, they weren't interested. But it was actually the younger guys, you know, it was Joey and a couple of others that had contacted me. Scott Everson, he's older, but still, I mean, most of these people are younger than me. And that's what really, other than Sean Baker, a lot of them are younger than me. And they've
yeah.
taken this on as a way of improving their health, which I had no idea was even a thing.
It must be
That's surprising.
it must be funny seeing all these people like starting this diet that you were on already for so long, and you know, so everyone's like getting such a shock, but it was just normal to you. It's just the way you eat. Um, so after being on the diet for 40 years, what would you say like the main benefits are, or like your main advice for people on a carnivore diet, say for viewers?
Well, there's a lot of benefits. The biggest benefit is that you don't waste food. When you're on this diet, you don't have. When I took care of my parents when they got older and sick, and I lived with them, we're constantly throwing out food. You'd buy all these fruits and vegetables, half of them would go bad. You know, when you're on the carnivore diet, a lot of your meat you're going to eat pretty quickly when you get it. You know,
Yeah,
if you buy a piece of beef, it's going to be eaten in a couple of meals.
yeah,
For me, I never got tired of it. I love meat. It's one of the few foods that I actually crave. I don't really think about anything else. Now, I get a lot of food that's given to me for the ducks. People give me food scraps and whatever, I give it to the ducks. There's a lot of this food that's donated, you know, it's like crackers and chips and snacks and all that stuff. And I look at that and I give it to the ducks. You know, I'm sure, hopefully I don't poison my ducks, but at least they like to nibble on that. They got plenty of insects. I give them meat as well. So they're relatively healthy, but I give it to them. But I know a lot of people that eat this stuff constantly, and I've tasted it, and I go, this is terrible. It's like these goldfish crackers. That was the thing. I knew so many
yeah,
people that were addicted to these stupid goldfish crackers. It's like Cheetos and those stupid Doritos and all this other crap. You know, those corn chips that have like colors on them. When you touch it with your hand, it gets all yellow and
yeah,
nasty
yeah.
looking. And what's the point? You know, it tastes awful. It absolutely tastes awful. And I don't understand the attraction to it. But when you're on the carnivore diet, it's so simple. You don't have to worry about all these ingredients. You go to the typical kitchen, it's full of spices and it's full of additives and all this stuff. My mom's kitchen had so many spices you wouldn't believe it. There had to be at least 20, 30 different types. I use no spices at all. I barely even use salt. When I cook meat, most of the time, I either put it in the pan or put it in a pot, throw a little heat on it, and just let it cook in its own juices. I don't have to season it. And I guess the more you eat this diet, the more you like it.
Yeah. That is true. Like the more you cut out all the other crap, all the stuff that isn't even food, just like all the sugars and corns and soys and stuff, you actually start to do like the taste of meat because your body realizes that's the only food that has real nutrition, so it craves it. So do you think you'll stay on this diet forever, or I guess till you have a heart attack?
Yeah, I'm going to stay on the diet. I tried the vegetarian diet, and believe me, it's not something I can do. Even standard American diet, most of the foods they serve, I just can't. They make me feel sick. I get this bad feeling. I see people eating donuts and cookies, and ugh, it's terrible. It's just ugh, nasty. But if I see somebody having a delicious steak, then I say, yeah, oh, we're going to have a barbecue. Come over. We got steak. Okay, I'll have steak. Beef stew. I'm up for that. Just don't put any potatoes in my beef stew. Just put beef. You can put some onion in there if you want to, but don't put too many veggies because I'm just going to take those out and give them to the ducks. Or like it's like fried chicken. If somebody has fried chicken, most of the time I don't want it because it's covered with this crap crust. They get all this flour and all this garbage and they put it on there and then they fry it
Yeah,
in seed oils. So if I do eat that chicken, I remove the crust and then wipe off the chicken as much as I can and eat it. And they laugh at me. Oh, you're throwing away the best part of the chicken. No, I'll give it to the ducks. They can have it.
your
But
ducks
for
must be
me,
eating a lot of. Your ducks are on a sad diet then, pretty much, because they're eating the foods that you're not eating. It's the
pretty
best thing.
much. The good thing about them is I do give them meat and they do have a lot of insects to eat. So they're doing okay. And I think a lot of it is a bird has a very fast digestive system. They can eat all kinds of garbage and they seem to survive all right. But what I've noticed is that the ducks that live at the hospital and they live over there at the lake, people feed them junk food and they are in really bad shape. Some of them, their feet are deformed. They get like what they call bumblefoot. They get a lot of infections. And then they get what's called angel wing, where the feathers stick up sideways and they can't fly. So the junk food actually does destroy them if that's all they eat. Now, if they're
Okay.
eating good along with it, it doesn't seem to have as much of an effect.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you say that. Also, just because you're a bit of a crazy guy in the carnivore diet and you started it, do you have any other crazy lifestyle habits as well, or anything else like maybe you don't drink tap water or anything else that's a bit out of the norm?
Oh, I do drink tap water sometimes. I do have a water filter, but I do drink tap water at times. I don't like to drink any kind of juice, any kind of fruit juice. I don't like soda. The only thing I really drink is water.
Hmm.
Um, Other than that, I'm not a big fan of any of these things. I know there's a lot of these flavored waters and stuff. I don't like that. Strange habits, I have a lot of them. One of them, obviously, is that I believe a lot in alternative energy. So I've done all kinds of crazy things like running my truck on wood, running vehicles on vegetable oil, making diesel from plastic, and then composting is another thing I like to do. My garden is all compost. I collect all the yard waste from all my friends and grind it up, turn it into
Well,
soil, and I actually like to grow fruits and vegetables, which I usually give away either to the ducks or to people I know. My house looks like a forest. You can't even see it. It looks like an empty lot from the air. I drive
it's
old
cool.
vehicles. I don't have anything newer than maybe 30 years old. And my favorite car is 1969 Dodge Charger, which I drive sometimes. Sometimes I drive my truck. Of course, I live in Miami where people are maniacs on the road. So I like driving the biggest, junkiest, oldest vehicle around so they stay away from me.
So you're very old school, and it seems to also be serving you well. You seem chill. You seem like you're not too stressed. You seem at peace. Do you have any advice for sort of the younger folks watching, people my age, just younger people, just yeah, advice, I guess, just on society and life?
Don't be afraid to try something new. A lot of times people tend to follow others. I know a lot of people, they think they can become successful just by imitating someone else that's successful. But really, when it comes down to it, you're going to have to figure out what works for you because nobody is exactly the same. Everybody has a different upbringing. You may have different genetics. You may have different situations, different opportunities. If something isn't working, don't keep pushing at it. Try to find another way. That's what I did. I try to get things done. I listen to what people tell me. It doesn't work. I go, you know what? Let me try something else. It's always good to be independent, think for yourself, educate yourself, and then think for yourself. And that seems to really make the most difference. And don't get too stressed over the little things. I know people that get really upset when they make a plan and they can't follow through with it. But in my life, that's normal. I may have a day where the roof's leaking and I have to fix that. Last week, I went to drive somewhere and my truck stalled out. So I had to push it off to the side of the road before I could get it started again. Actually, that's another good thing about the carnivore diet. It's not that easy to push a pickup truck, but if you're eating meat, you can get a lot of strength even if you're skinny. So that helps a lot. But definitely thinking for yourself and trying to analyze things at a basic level. Don't let your emotions determine what you're going to do. Try to maybe try something out, see what it does. If it doesn't work, try something else, and just keep experimenting until you get that right balance.
That's some really good advice, to be honest. Like, that is some really good advice, because I think that the way we find new things, the way we find things that work is by trying new things, and you're never really going to know the answer. Like, if you didn't try this stupid meat diet, then you wouldn't be here 40 years later in good health. So I really do think that trying things is the best, is really good advice. Yeah, so how can our viewers like find you? Do you have a YouTube channel? Do you have any socials, or you sort of just stay low key?
I'm not a big fan of social media. In fact, I used to do MySpace at one time. That shows how long ago it was, but it just seemed to be really kind of frustrating. And I mean, I had tried Facebook and I never got on Instagram or any of these other social media. To me, it just seemed ridiculous. You have all these people on there with all these friends and so-called friends they never communicate with. I do
Yeah, I
have a
don't like
YouTube
it.
channel. Yes, I'd rather do the face-to-face in person, or the video conference is good. In fact, I wish that they had more like a video conference for people with different interests like we're doing, but with multiple people. But unless you're real time, or if you're kind of doing it face to face, it's not the same thing. And I notice the people that I do know that use social media, they were always looking at their phone every time it
Yeah,
would ding. They'd look at it and see what it's like. Oh, that's ridiculous. I don't want to do that. I don't carry a cell phone anyway, so when I do go online, it has to be from my computer. But I do have a YouTube page, and I am debating whether or not I should make videos.
you
I've made a
should.
few short videos. Yeah, I'm getting that a lot. I've had a lot of people actually join my Charger Mopar YouTube channel. So evidently they want me to make some videos. So what I'm doing, I'm working on getting a decent camera, other than this webcam. And I do have a camcorder, but it's pretty old, and a better microphone so I don't sound so bad. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think you really should upload videos. You're really good at speaking to the camera. You've got so many crazy stories. You're like the longest carnivore on YouTube. I think definitely you should. Do you want me to link your channel below, or it's up to you? You can say no. It's all good.
You can link my channel. It's a
All right.
shame that my parents weren't alive, because if they would have been alive, they could have told some stories about me when I was
That
younger.
would
In
have been
fact,
cool.
most of the people that I knew when I was growing up, they were old and they're dead now, because I had a lot of older friends when I was younger. But there's a few friends that I have that have known me for 40 years, and you could ask any of them about my ridiculous diet, and they always say, "Oh, Rick, he likes his bland food. He doesn't eat. Um, he only eats meat. All these stories. He doesn't like vegetables." So that's kind of what it's been. So I'm definitely, if I get a decent camera and a decent microphone, I'm going to start making some videos. I also have to relearn how to edit the stupid things. I made a video a few months ago and I put it on YouTube. It went in some format, got messed up, and it ended up as a small video. And I said, forget it. But when I
It is
get set up
hard.
for it,
It is hard to figure out. It is a bit of a pain. But once you figure it out, I do think that you'll be a really big attribution to the carnivore community. Like, I'll definitely watch your videos. So yeah, guys, I'll link his channel below. Thanks so much for your time today, Rick. Your story was crazy. How you went from trying to eat literally junk food to try to get a heart attack to then basically being in default on a carnivore diet. I mean, that's ridiculous. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me today, Rick.
my pleasure.